Hello everyone, and welcome back to my psychology channel where I talk about trauma, growing up in a dysfunctional household, relationships, and more. I'm Sofia Voss, Doctor of Psychology, the author of the book for adult children of alcoholics, the creator of the workshop for adult children of alcoholics, and a coach. In today's video, we are going to be discussing a very important topic, and that is overcoming shame with self-compassion. I've made a video about ACOAS and shame in the past where I go over why adult children of alcoholics often experience shame. And in this video, I want to expand on this topic from a healing perspective. In this video, we'll explore what shame is, why it's a difficult emotion to carry, and the role of self-compassion in extinguishing shame. You can also sign up for my online workshop for adult children of alcoholics, where I talk about this topic in detail and give you personalized worksheets, and besides shame, other things for adult children of alcoholics as well. You can find all the links below. So before we get started, I do want to point out that guilt and shame are oftentimes confused, and adult children usually experience both, like overwhelming guilt and shame. But in this video, we are going to focus specifically on shame. So guilt comes situationally, and it's experienced as a result of an action. For example, persistent feelings of guilt for leaving behind a codependent parent or leaving the house. Shame, however, has to do with the feeling that you are somehow very wrong and faulty at your very core. And it's also accompanied by a harsh self-critical voice and kind of like shades of feelings of disgust towards yourself. So guilt has to do with situations, and shame, it's like you. So I'm gonna make another video on guilt, but this one will focus on shame. Experiencing shame means feeling that you have breached some norm, as if a norm exists, and you, in comparison, are either below or above that threshold of the norm. And you don't necessarily need to be shamed by another person or a group. You can shame yourself. There doesn't need to be any environmental indications of shame. And feelings of shame can come in relation to your physical body experience towards your behavior, the way that you speak, your actions, certain habits, your family members, your friends, some experience or incident now or from the past. And if you judge those things and feel a negative feeling towards yourself, ask yourself, are you judging yourself to fall above or below some perceived norm? And if the answer is yes, then that feeling is most likely shame. So people who are prone to shame tend to also be more at risk for depression, social anxiety, general anxiety. And shame has been used by communities to get others to behave a certain way. And in fact, it often does work, and it gets people to conform to some form of societal standards. People start to inhibit themselves from behaving in an unapproved way in order to avoid being shamed because it's so painful. And so shame has its place in society and is a normal emotion with an evolutionary purpose that can sometimes be used to positively guide the individual to pro-social behavior. However, too often, particularly for people who grew up in dysfunctional homes, grew up in homes where their parents were maybe very critical, shame leads to isolation, depression, and inadequate behavior with other people as a result. And shame gives this illusion that it is protective, it's a voice of reason, it's a voice of guidance, but studies show that the self-shaming voice leads the person to behave in ways that are more destructive to themselves and to relationships. And this is where I introduce the topic of self-compassion as an antidote to shame. You know, most people who come from trauma backgrounds like squirm at this idea of self-compassion. Like, even listening to these words, self-compassion, can feel really uncomfortable. And if you are in this camp, it's because you have this illusion that the self-critical voice will protect you and guide you to become better. And the voice of self-compassion, it just sounds like useless, too much to bear, maybe a little indulgent, impossible, and fake. And maybe it's like for other people, but definitely not for yourself. That's what it could feel like. And growing up in an alcoholic family can leave deep emotional scars. Adult children can internalize this belief that we're somehow different than other people. The shame that we experience about our parents and about ourselves as the consequence of this product that left this home can really leave us feeling immensely flawed. And there's a sense that we must somehow be punished by our own voice or by the actions or voices of others, and that we may not deserve the good things that other people have. That is obviously not true. However, it is really, really difficult to shake this feeling that it could be true. And now, shame usually comes with the voice of the self-critic that is attached to it. And it is also observed in the physical body through your posture and your internal sensations. So let's talk about tackling the voice of the self-critic by the voice of the self-compassion as the starting point of overcoming shame. And to begin, I want to share an example of why the voice of self-compassion is necessary and how it works and why it leads to positive changes. So let's say like you lost your favorite watch, and now the shaming voice would tell you, oh, I'm such an idiot, I lose stuff, I'm such a klutz, so on and so on. So what happens next? Well, now you're in a bad mood. You have your head down, you're obviously upset about the watch, but additionally, you're also blaming yourself and thinking of all the ways in which you're flawed. Your posture changes, and if you engage in any destructive, self-soothing behaviors, like, drinking or whatever, you're more likely to engage in those as well. Disordered eating, drinking, maybe canceling plans on people, and so on. And so if you were to be working on developing a voice of self-compassion in this scenario, what you might do is maybe you lost your watch and then you feel sad, obviously, because it's your favorite watch. Why wouldn't you feel sad? And you allow yourself to feel that sadness at this loss. And instead of shaming yourself and telling yourself, that you're flawed, there's something really wrong with you, you can soothe yourself by telling yourself that everybody loses something sometimes, and you acknowledge your sadness and offer yourself some kindness. And maybe if you are really prone to losing things, and you lose things like all the time, you ask yourself with kindness, why does that happen? And maybe it's because you have like some untreated ADHD, or maybe your current life situation is just really stressful and you have a hard time juggling everything. And maybe you can use some organizational skills and tools that can help you like tidy up your day-to-day life. And so you accept that and you build a constructive plan to change the fact that you lose things frequently, if that is even the case for you. But with the over the voice of the shaming voice, your mood is not as bad. Although you feel sad at the loss of the watch, you can spend the rest of the day engaging in constructive behaviors rather than destructive ones, and in this kind of shaming, with this shaming voice. So you can use the same template no matter what. Maybe losing a watch is trivial, but if you destruct a relationship, lose your job, relapse on some unhealthy behavior, using the voice of forgiveness and compassion will offer you a road to constructing what you want to change, because you're placing yourself as a kind of a positive protagonist that experiences a hardship or even stumbles upon a personal trait that can use work. And being a positive protagonist in the story of your life alters your mood to a more positive stance, with which it is easier to achieve constructive change over a negative, awful, undeserving protagonist, which wallows in shame and ultimately engages in further destruction because of the negative emotional burden that makes it more difficult to rise to constructive, positive behavior. And so to recap, putting yourself in a positive mood by offering yourself compassion rather than berating your whole being and placing yourself in a negative mood gives you the springboard to facilitate positive change and actually construct a better you over shaming yourself and thus placing yourself in a negative felt experience in which you are more likely to engage in destructive behaviors and actually facilitate a worse version of you. So I hope this example makes sense and allows you to just consider the concept of developing compassion towards yourself. And will you always feel shame? Like, absolutely, because shame is a normal feeling, and if you've been experiencing it for quite some time, it is unlikely to just magically leave, right? It takes a lot of work. However, if you build awareness that you shame yourself and you understand how it leads to negative traps, you could work to build an antidote to shame through the voice of self-compassion. So let's move on and talk about how to build the voice of self-compassion. And this is done in 3 steps. And that's awareness of the critical voice, acceptance, and creating a basic script for self-compassion as a start. Now, the best way to develop the voice of self-compassion is in therapy. And when you work with a person who offers you this kind of unconditional positive regard, you are going to be able to internalize that voice and that use it within yourself. And outside of that, here are some tools. The first thing that you want to develop is awareness of your thoughts. Now, when you are having negative self-talk, developing awareness and labeling the voice of your self-critic will help you gain a buffer between your self-critic and your emotions. So the next time your mind is running scripts that are mean and negative towards yourself, label that voice. Tell yourself, okay, here goes that critical voice again. And you can even give it a name, like Kruger, for example. So you can be like, all right, here goes Kruger. You recognize that voice. So you're labeling the critic's voice with keeping in mind that this voice is a string of thoughts, and your thoughts are not necessarily true or real. And the next thing you want to do is practice self-acceptance. Remember that being flawed is part of being human. So even if you made a mistake, this is all part of the experience. This mistake that you made is not your first, and it's most certainly not going to be your last. So remind yourself of that and turn it into a positive. There's learning that can be derived from the experience. And finally, try to develop a voice of compassion. It could be in the form of a standard kind thing that you say to yourself that applies to any situation, such as, I'm a human and I did this thing, but I choose to forgive myself no matter what. Or you can tell yourself, okay, well, so-and-so happened, but I will be kind to myself no matter what. And keep in mind that you can still take responsibility for your actions. You can make amends, changes, learn lessons, and still be kind to yourself. You progress by putting yourself in a positive situation, in a positive mood through self-kindness. So there, you have it. Shame is a difficult emotion to carry that many people from dysfunctional families carry undeservingly. Self-compassion can offer an antidote to shame and can lead you to more constructive behaviors. Self-compassion is not easy to build, but it is doable. Let me know when you thought about this video and if you have any questions. I'm here for you if you are interested in one-on-one coaching, maybe if you want to try developing this voice of self-compassion or anything else. And also sign up for my online workshop for adult children of alcoholics, where I go into detail about shame and guilt and give you lots of exercises to work on independently. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my upcoming videos. Happy healing.